All righty, we're good. Go.
Okay. Good morning, everybody. It is the 28th of April, and we're actually in Utah today, and we've got mainly questions to ask for reflection, for introspection. Before we do that, though, of course, excuse me, the slaughterhouse of failure is not in our destiny. We shall persevere until we succeed, of Mandino, modified for us. So recently, Matthew McConaughey wrote a book called Green Lights. And we discussed that a little bit last week about, where we are in the green lights and traffic lights and what have you. And this week he had an event where he had 2.4 million people on an international Zoom call. And it was very thought-provoking and inspiring. And so that's why we thought we'd ask a bunch of questions. And it would start with, he was talking about the boogeyman. Where's your boogeyman? Who is your boogeyman? Are you inspiring and transforming people, or are you stagnant? What are you doing different now than you were a year ago? And what are you going to be doing different in a year from now? These are introspections we need to have. Matthew took a road trip when he reached a moment of stagnation. And he said, you've got to confess to some of or admit to some of your realities, whether they're good or bad. And his reality came that he said, well, I need something more in my life. And he took a road trip to go and rediscover himself and rediscover what he was doing and who he was with. So today we're going to ask, questions like that. Are you evolving instead of revolving? Where's your boogeyman? Dan?
Yeah, everything that Matthew McConaughey wrote in his book Green Lights, and then we listened in on he did an event with Tony Robbins and Dean Graziosi this last Monday called The Art of Living or Art of Living. And a lot of what they talked about really resonated with me. And for those of you who don't know me well, I have been labeled as a little bit eccentric or quirky, and I think Matthew McConaughey could be labeled that way as well. So that's why I think he really resounds, what he says and how he says it really resounds with me, because even though I'm a type A personality, I'm also really, really laid back. But when it comes time to get to work, I'm hyper focused and I get done what I need to get done to be successful. And I do that by focusing on the important things. I don't focus on the extraneous things. I don't think about the past. I don't think about fear. I don't really fear anything. And that's where this concept of the boogeyman comes in. It's really just the fear of the unknown. You don't know, think back to your childhood and, you probably heard the little tale of the boogeyman, and it was meant to create fear in you as a child. And I know my brothers used that on me quite profusely. And it did create fear in me when I was 5, 6, 7 years old. And so you're kind of brought up to fear things in one way or another. And most importantly, you tend to fear the unknown, and the boogeyman is the unknown. So your mind is always inching towards thinking about the boogeyman or that fear of the unknown. And if you allow that into your psyche, it's going to defeat you. Right? So we always talk about, what's your why? What's your motivation? Those things are important. But if you don't know what you fear, those things are irrelevant, because that fear of the unknown, that fear of success, that fear of what if I am ultra successful, that fear of what if I do fail, that's going to hold you back from being focused and reaching those goals, that purpose, that why that you have. So we need to start thinking a little bit more about these things that we fear that are unknown, and why do we fear them if they're unknown? We don't know if they can be positive. We don't know if they can be negative. If we fear them because we've been ingrained to fear things that we don't know, it can really hinder our development. But once you take away that fear, that boogeyman, you take that brave step to face it, you see that it was not as scary as you may have thought in your mind, right? So we need to look eye to eye with the unknown. We need to look the boogeyman straight in the eye, find out what that fear is. And that fear of the unknown, when you're brave and you're aggressive, that fear of the unknown will heed. And then the cost of facing that fear, it's not free. It's hard. It's going to create a lot of uneasiness in your mind, in your life. But these fears are the rite of passage towards getting what you want. And that's a lot of what Matthew talked about in this Art of Living webinar.
Well, fear of fear itself. What is fear? We've described it as false evidence appearing real. It doesn't exist. It's not a tangible thing. It's not something you can hold and grab and touch and feel. It's entirely etheric. It's in your mind. It's in one's mind. Fear of fear itself, fear of the unknown. All of these things, these are things that we create in our own minds. And the more timid we are about facing our realities, and this is where we've got to face the realities of who we are, but we've got to introspect to be able to understand who we are so that we can face those realities. Are those apprehensions we have real, or are they imaginary? We also have this imposter syndrome. When we achieve something, you say, well, did I really deserve it? Because it's the boogeyman again. It's in our minds. Am I really worth that? We have those doubts, and then I don't think I did. I fear I'm not that worthy. And all of these things are mind games that we shouldn't allow to happen. So we've got to dominate those, and we've got to actually, the way to do it, one of the ways that, Dan, you're right, it's not easy, but it can be simple if we look at it as a fun thing. Anytime we have a challenge and we look at it as something that is fun, let's look at any challenge and say, my gosh, I'll never be able to do that. Well, that's a boogeyman in your mind saying you won't be able to do it. The other one is to say, to be ridiculous, of course I can do that. And that's not a problem. What's the big issue? And for example, you're a mountain climber. I'm looking at the mountains in Utah over here right this instant, and I'm thinking of the guy who went up El Capitan in record time with, the names of these guys, I don't remember them, but incredible challenges to go up El Capitan. He didn't have the boogeyman there was being fearless. And this is the whole point of it. If you make it as a fun, as challenge, as fun, as a challenge that is rewarding, and it will snuff out all the boogeymen and the apprehensions and fears we have. They don't exist. They're not real.
Yeah, I mean, these fears that we have within ourselves, these fears that we've been taught, this cycle of fear that we sometimes put ourselves in because we've been taught to fear things. I mean, imagine if you didn't grow up with the story of the boogeyman, or being taught to fear things, how much more fearless you would be, how much more open-minded you would be to getting outside of your comfort zone. And so, there were seven or nine like important topics that they really covered. But for me, they all come back to this boogeyman, this fear. One of them is gratitude. Do you show yourself enough gratitude? Do you show others gratitude? If you don't, why don't you? Is there a fear of how you may be perceived as maybe being weaker, or maybe you feel weaker because you're showing gratitude to somebody else? Do you have this fear that, this imposter syndrome? Do you have a fear that you don't deserve something? Do you have a fear that others don't think that you deserve something? This imposter syndrome is a very kind of human condition. We're conditioned to have this imposter syndrome where we don't think that we're good enough, that we maybe don't deserve to be successful or deserve to be happy, or whatever it may be that whatever level of success that you've achieved, and you don't feel like maybe you deserve that. The other thing is trust. We have somebody break our trust, and then we automatically fear trusting everybody else. Is trust your boogeyman? One thing they talked about was that being selfish is good. Do we fear being selfish because it's looked badly or frowned upon to be selfish? How many times have you been taught that you were selfish, or you're growing up and you did something and your parents told you that you were selfish? That created that fear of being selfish. But selfish can be good, even though it's perceived as being bad. Being selfish is thought of as being negative, but it can actually be positive. We cannot fully serve others unless we learn to serve ourselves first. We have to be selfish in gaining more knowledge, taking care of our mental health, taking care of our physical health, and learning more and more every day, because only then can we be available and able to help others, right? So selfishness and selflessness feed off of each other, right? In order to be selfless, you have to be selfish, because you have to take care of yourself first. So do you fear being selfish? Do you go overboard in being selfless so that you're not perceived as being selfish?
Well, here's the interesting fine line. We always refer to the flight attendant who says, put oxygen on you first before you put them on your kids. How the hell are you going to help anybody if you don't help yourself first? So that's not being selfish. That is just prioritizing, if you know what you want, prioritizing your efficiency or prioritizing your possibilities, your unlimited possibilities. But to enable to do that, we always have to introspect and know who we are, what do we want, what is our why to do certain things, or what is our why to pursue whatever we're pursuing. And this is what it started. McConaughey started with a road trip. And we got in a truck, a trailer, whatever, and he just drove around the States for months. And he was asking questions, introspecting and talking to people and finding out what's going on, to find his new why, to find his own reason for doing things. And selfish, as you said it, or selfless, is no more than you're willing to serve once you've understood your own direction, because you can't give direction unless you have your own direction. You can't possibly tell someone how to get there if you haven't been there. All these do-gooders who, their lives, they want to save the planet by doing this and the next thing, and they've never moved out of the couch. Those are, all the theorists. But if you actually get out there, get bruised a little bit, and come back with some bumps and bloody nose and what have you from life's experience, and you've understood, and you've taken the time to take the reins of your own horse, ride it, and fallen off a couple of times. And that's not being selfish. That's just understanding how to ride the horse to everybody else.
Yeah, and sometimes you need to ride, somebody else's horse, and sometimes you need to ride your own horse.
Yeah.
Do you have a fear of false identity? Do you even know if you have a false identity? What is a false identity? A false identity is, you tend to create a bubble around you with people who think the same as you, who talk the same as you, who dress the same as you, all of these different things. Think about racial divide, political divide, religious divide. We tend to surround ourselves with people that think the same, that act the same, right? But you have to come out of these echo chambers of people who think the same way as you, who have the same belief systems as you sometimes, to listen to other perspectives. but we fear that, this is another boogeyman, because we fear that doing that will compromise our own identity, but it actually enhances our own identity, because putting yourself in others' shoes doesn't mean you have to quit wearing your shoes, right? So, be open to new ideas, be open to new information. It doesn't diminish your identity at all. It only enhances it, right? So don't be afraid to wear your own shoes, most importantly, but don't be afraid to put yourself in other shoes as well.
I've mentioned many times, in Colombia, there was a very big billboard and it had a big 6 on it. And on the looking from above was the father and from below was the son. And they were both having a hell of a fight, a big argument about whether it's a 6 or whether it's a 9. And they were both right until you come out of your comfort zone of seeing it as a 9 and you come and see what your son is looking at and he sees a 6. So that is where you grow. You personally grow by coming out of your comfort zone of dogma and seeing somebody else's point of view. And that actually is where we are self-led, or we become where we grow. And we can see the other person's point of view. And this is how we can help grow our businesses, our teams, the people we work with, by understanding why did they not see what I see? That's why we come to Utah. We come to Utah to unify a vision of what our business is about. Because we've all got a vision of our business. We've been doing it for some time, some more, some longer, some shorter time. But the idea is to come and have a uniform view of what it is that we're trying to achieve. And then you find your own why in that. Why would you do this? Oh, because I want to get another horse. Or why? Because I want to get another house. Or I want to go and live in Costa Rica, or whatever it is you want to do, your why. And that's what we've got to identify as well. So these are things that we're looking to see how we can build our teams. So we've got, actually Vince is here as well. He just earned, because people say he won. He didn't. He earned a trip to Dominican Republic, and he's here with a bunch of people that he was that he brought to the event, because he wants them to see what he's seeing. This is the whole point. We invite people to see what we see. So here's Vince, and I thought what we might do is, we've just got a couple of minutes, and I know we got a hard close at 8 Mountain Time or wherever we are. And so, Vince, what's your why?
It's changed since I've gotten into business. I mean, for my personal note, it was just basically, I joke, but I said it was revenge. I had gone through a really bad divorce, basically was starting back at 0, and just really didn't have any purpose. And so when I first came into the business, it was just an aspect of revenge, just to go back and do it again, just to make my ex mad. Like, I just want to send her a copy of a $100,000 check, piss her off. But it changed since when I first came in. It was a selfish thing. And I think we all talked a lot about selfish and selfless. And I think we just need to stop with the word self and just go with that. What is the view of yourself? And so now 2 years later, my vision has changed, and it's back to my original thing, is helping people find their purpose. And that's a big thing. I obviously say I love making people money. I love the feeling it makes when you make someone else, they get to feel that success. And so my purpose has changed from a greedy aspect of just trying to, wanting to put myself back, to going back in that state of giving, where helping people find their purpose and helping people renew their vision to dream again. Because I think most of what we've dealt with is conditioning in life. And we were just talking about this earlier. I think we said by the time you're 5, you've heard no. I'm not sure if this is the right number. It's like 100,000 times as a kid, you've been told no. No. You don't normally, when you tell your kids no, you don't say it once. You say it like 6 times. No. And so we've been conditioned our whole life. We wonder where these fears come from. I think it's from conditioning. A lot of people like me grew up in a very poor household. They have a lot of negative thought towards money. And so, growing up very poor in rural Mississippi, we're always said, money's not going to make you happy. Money's like this. So because they weren't striving, they put these bad philosophies in us when we're young. And a lot of this conditioning comes from is the boogeyman. You told as a kid your whole life, don't talk to strangers, don't talk to strangers. And then you join this business and be like, go talk to strangers. And so it's a complete, it's a complete conflict of when you come to the reality of life versus the conditioning we received as a child. And a lot of that conditioning goes with us. And so a lot of people think it's the enemy. And I think the enemy is the inner me. It is the self fight that you have with yourself. And a lot of people lack focus in what they do is because they don't have a clear plan. So a lot of people have, like, they think they have goals, but it's really wishful thinking. And like, if you can't hand someone your stack of goals, if you can't show me what your goal is, it's wishful thinking, because you can't, the whole point of the goal is to condition your brain. And we have to literally in this business go through reconditioning, because if you went to college, you've been conditioned to think a certain way. If you grew up in a household, a poor household, you've been conditioned a certain way. If you grew up in a wealthy household, you have a different perspective on things. And so I think a lot of people here, they bring baggage, not understanding. We start, hey, we need to recondition, everything we thought to change the focus. And so, I mean, and what's really been valuable to me was really looking for association, because I was just at a really, really low point in my life. I mean, just devastated. If you came around and wake up in the middle of the night crying, I was in a bar with my friends crying. I mean, I was just completely devastated. When I first came to the event, I just saw this group of people and I just like, man, these are really good people. And so that became more valuable to me than the aspect of money of that, was just getting around a quality of people to where, you can feel good about yourself. They feel good about themselves, and that law of association. So it's kind of changed since I started within the 2 years, just coming in being angry and ego to just, wanting to give back to everyone, making sure everyone's successful, and just being around all of y'all. Being y'all accepting me has been, really, it's meant a lot, just being around that group of people. So it's kind of changed, and your vision will change too as you go. You'll come in for one reason and you'll be around a few years later for another.
Well, the first thing is introspection. Go ahead.
No, I was the same way, Vince. I mean, I came into this business because I saw the opportunity to make money. And very quickly after I came out to the forum and then got involved with these mindset calls and some of the other things that were going on, my purpose changed. My purpose changed to helping others, create their own success, because I've done that multiple times with different businesses and been successful in business. And so I think, all of us here, we all wear different shoes, but we utilize the forum is to bring other people out, to let them walk in our shoes for a little bit, because we know what the company has from a product perspective and a technology perspective and a business perspective. And we want to show that to others, right? We want to let them walk in our shoes and wear our shoes for a weekend to see what we know. But we also have to be cognizant of where they're coming from. Like you said, what's their background? They grow up in a poor family, a rich family. Have they been successful in the past? Have they had, multiple setbacks? How can we help them provide a more positive environment for them to thrive in? Because a lot of times all it takes to see success is putting yourself in a different environment, right? Surrounding yourself with those people who make you better, right? That allow you to be better, that don't judge, that don't create those fears in you to be successful, to help others be successful, to have a leadership mindset of abundance, right?
Building someone up versus breaking them down. And so that's different. I mean, people outside of this environment are always being broken down. So it almost feels weird when you come around us, when you're like, everyone's excited, trying to pour into you. And it's literally the complete opposite of everything society has to offer. And that's why people, when we come into this, it either feels weird, or you will either change to become who you need to be to remain in the environment, or you'll just fall back into complacency of the environment you came from.
But you've got to come out of your comfort zone of complacency, or of your comfort zone of your surroundings, of people who think like you, and go and find out, because the world doesn't think like we do individually anyway. Everybody's got a different opinion, different way of doing things, different lifestyles, and so on. So we've got to come out of that, and the way to do that is to introspect and to come to an admitted moment. Admit who you are, for the good or for the bad. What are my good things, good points? What are my weak points? And how do I fix one thing? How do I fix another? What can I do? All of these things have to do with personal growth and the mindset which we have to adjust to growing.
Yep.
Are we gonna go to a hard stop here? We're actually on Scott Zoom, so this call is actually being broadcast in the main room.
Yeah, I was gonna wrap it up here. I want to thank Vince for joining us. He always provides some great insight. You
Yeah.
know, and the enemy, we've been talking about fear. The enemy is the inner me. Are you your own boogeyman? Think about that over the weekend. And thanks, Lawrence, for being here. Appreciate it. Appreciate all of
Thank
you
you.
on this call.
Thanks, Dan.
We'll see everybody next week.
Thanks,
Have a great
Dan.
weekend.
Thanks,
All right, see
Vin.
you
next
Thanks,
Friday.
Lawrence. Have a
Bye-bye.
great
Thank you.
conference.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Yes, thanks.
Thanks, you guys.